Thanks, everybody. Before we start, I just wanted to, I was talking with a friend recently about this whole entire capstone experience, and we were saying that it's like we're in that final stretch of this mission impossible, and it's just awesome to finally get here, and I'm just congratulating all the groups on all this awesome work that they've shown today, so big round of applause to everybody. I'm here, my name is Laura Humphrey, and I'm representing the team that investigated how building energy systems can become more resilient in the face of climate-related flooding and storm surges. And we did this on behalf of our client, NYSERDA. I'd also like to thank our fabulous advisor, Susanne DesRoches. So this is a map that all New Yorkers know probably way too well after last year. Of course, this is the evacuation zones for Hurricane Sandy. The areas in red are evacuation zone A as the primary location of interest for our client, NYSERDA. And why are they so concerned about this area? Well, the damage that Hurricane Sandy caused to buildings in the flood zone interrupted lives and livelihoods, incurred tremendous costs for privately owned buildings, and put emergency services at risk. Now, since the storm, we hear a lot about this word resiliency, but we don't really often know what it actually means. So we did a lot of research into this, and this is a definition that we really liked in our research, because it comes up with the idea of the critical threshold. And that concept allowed us to understand how a building would be considered to be resilient, both during and after a storm event, and then in planning for future events. So this leads to our primary inquiry, which would be what strategies can be implemented to make building energy systems more resilient to future flooding events. Our client is NYSERDA, which is a public benefit corporation that uses state funds to promote energy efficiency and renewables. In New York City, NYSERDA runs grant and incentive programs for large commercial and multifamily building retrofits. So NYSERDA is considering incorporating resilience concerns into their programs, but they're really unsure how to do this. This is really uncharted territory for them. So this brings us to our second inquiry, which is how can resilience needs of flood-prone New York City buildings fit in with NYSERDA's mission? Can new or existing programs include resilience improvements? So let's take a step back and talk about these buildings that are so problematic. So up here is kind of a simple schematic of what a typical building that NYSERDA is interested in would look like. We're talking about large existing high-rise buildings, about 50,000 square feet or larger. And here, this is how they're typically set up. You have most of the HVAC equipment, the heating, ventilation, cooling equipment in the basement, along with electrical systems, and then up top you have the air handling units. And of course, there's the problem. This is where the water came to in Hurricane Sandy for most of these buildings. Not only does this create electrical shorts, obviously, but also the salt creates contamination that's particularly corrosive and can lead to mold. And then, of course, there's also pollutants in this water that could create a full-scale remediation. We examined 3 primary building types based both on their predominance in the flood zone and on NYSERDA's interests. These are healthcare, multifamily, and commercial buildings. And because of the size that we're looking at, the equipment is actually pretty similar across these building types, so what really differentiates them are their uses. And by examining that, that's how we came to what would be their critical threshold for resilience, and that's how we measured them. So listed here, so first of all, healthcare. The critical threshold is extremely high. They have to provide uninterrupted services or potentially even expanded services during emergencies. Multifamily is a little bit lower. You still have lives at stake, and ideally people will be either safe, sheltering in place there during a storm, or be able to return to their homes pretty quickly thereafter. And commercial here is kind of the odd man out because we do expect it to be fully evacuated, so lives aren't at risk. It's really just assets that are at risk. So it's more of a business decision on the building owner's part. So before we get into the strategies that we looked at, there were some challenges that we came across in our research that made it interesting, I think would be the word now that we're done with it. So first of all, it's unprecedented. NYSERDA had originally asked us to look at case studies from other locations to guide our research, but we quickly found that the building typology of New York, the climate, and also the policy context made it very hard to find case studies from other locations that really applied. So we took it to the streets, and we started talking to practitioners who were really doing this in New York City, working with the buildings that were at risk, But an additional layer of challenge there was that these are private sector buildings, so people are hesitant to share information about costs and damages. That being said, we did survey a wide range of strategies that could be implemented, and the ones we brought into NYSERDA's attention fall into 4 basic categories. Of course, first we have floodproofing, so this is really thinking about how to keep water outside of the lower levels of the building. Then elevation, where can systems be relocated to, or what secondary systems should be put in? Next, we have backup generation. We're assuming that there would be blackout or brownout conditions, just as we saw after Sandy. And then we have efficiency. So again, kind of a oddball here, but we actually found it to be really important, especially if you think about blackout or brownout conditions and being able to provide safe thermal comfort levels for residents. So even though our strategies were diverse, we did analyze them using a similar methodology, and I'll just illustrate that here with one example of a strategy of relocating equipment to a higher floor or rooftop. So the first criteria we looked at is how technically feasible is this? How many buildings could do this? In this case, it's not so feasible because it's a full customization that's required. There's no blanket way to do this. It also may require additional construction of the building, like reinforcing the roof, which makes the cost to implement pretty high. Again, high engineering costs, and then in New York, especially important, the value of the rentable or saleable space that now you're putting a boiler into. But that being said, it is a good option for some buildings because it provides a full protection of the equipment and no downtime is expected. So as a result, we really think this is applicable for healthcare, although commercial and multifamily may consider it. So one of our most important findings was that there isn't one single silver bullet strategy to make buildings more resilient. To balance cost of implementation with maintaining critical thresholds, buildings need to take a holistic approach that combines floodproofing, elevation, backup generation, and thermal efficiency. Another benefit of this kind of modular approach is that it will help buildings adapt to changing conditions in the future. So just as there isn't just like one single strategy that's going to work to protect all buildings, the combination of strategies that we recommended varied by building type, again, based on their critical threshold. So there were a number of relatively easy to implement and offered moderate protection kind of strategies that we recommended across the board. The more high-end, high-level protection stuff we felt was more healthcare and possibly commercial. The strategies that focused on keeping systems running during an event or during a blackout that would have to be used at that period would be more for multifamily and healthcare. Efficiencies we really only recommended for multifamily buildings, primarily due to the expectation that these buildings are going to have limited electricity, so it's going to make really important that the building performance is quite high. Whereas hospitals are going to have to invest in very robust backup systems, and that's their primary concern. So let's see how this would actually work. So here's again our building schematic of now this is kind of a typical hospital the way it's set up now. And here's how it would look after we implement some of our strategies. So first we think about where these could be elevated, both within the boiler room and other places. Next we focus on floodproofing. And then finally, we have a robust backup system, including fuel cells. And the result is that even though water may come into the building, all the critical systems are protected and the building will still be able to function even in an emergency. So next, let's look at multifamily. Again, this is how something would look now, and here's how we're suggesting it could look afterwards. So we're elevating, but now just within the boiler room. Again, floodproofing is all the same, but now we're talking about efficiencies, thermal insulation, and yes, we did recommend ceiling fans, and a more limited backup generation system. But the result should largely be the same. So finally, this brings us to our recommendations of how NYSERDA could actually do this. So the first thing that we think is very important is that each building is unique, and the combination of strategies that's going to make sense really has to be custom made for each building. So we suggest that they support evaluation studies first. Next, we want them to understand that many of our strategies actually would provide efficiencies to the building year-round, not just in an emergency scenario, so we want to make sure they understand how this aligns with their original mission. And then finally, we actually found that their existing program structures would house this type of work very well. So we think that they can integrate the actual recommendations from the evaluations in the structures that they already have. So thanks again for your attention, and I'll take questions.
Great job, Laura. Did you happen to look into any of the costs for some of these things? Did that come up with the client at all?
Yeah, definitely, and it was a very challenging part of what we had to do. On one hand, because 50,000 square feet sounds big, but then in New York you could have buildings that are twice or 3 times the size, and for a lot of what we're talking about, it's design to the size of the building, so it's very hard to make generalizations. But we did find some basically we found enough information that we could compare them to each other, although we couldn't say, like, this strategy always costs this much for every building. That was kind of hard to provide.
Question for you. You mentioned that you had some difficulties finding information on how to flood-proof buildings or minimize flooding. Did you take into consideration looking at the UK and what they've done, for instance, like cities of Rotterdam?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was like the first big push of, we're thinking, we're like, Rotterdam, right? They're underwater. But what was actually really interesting about that is that, again, based on the policy context, is that in those types of countries, the country is thinking about these issues much more broadly. So they're talking about, let's not let the city flood at all. As opposed to us, where we're like, well, every man for himself, each building has to figure this out. So that's why the case studies were challenging.
Okay, we have time for one last question there in the back.
Thank you very much. Nice presentation. My question has to deal with the code structure. Did you review any, or did you review codes, and did you see any changing codes because of the storm?
Mm-hmm. Good question. Well, first of all, early on, we were like, we are not going to become code experts because that's just like explodes what we're doing to huge proportions. But we did consider any code violations with the things that we were recommending and making sure that there was nothing we were recommending that buildings can't do. But a lot of our research, when we talked about the interviews, actually came from, there's a task force basically right now that's being assembled to reassess the building code in light of Hurricane Sandy and obviously future storms. And so we did talk to a lot, and of course their report is coming out in May. It would have been so much easier if it came out in July or January, but we did talk to a lot of them, and they did talk to us a lot about what they were thinking and what people are talking about. So hopefully a lot of what we're talking about will be in line with what the new codes will look like in the future.
Thanks very much, Lily. Thanks.
So my name is James Coker, and I'm presenting on behalf of our group, which is Shella, Adiel, Tom, Madura, Anastasia, Joanna, and Sabu. Our advisor was Kizzy for the semester, and our client was the New Jersey Audubon Society. The agenda for tonight includes the client overview, project overview, the project outcomes, and our research methodology, as well as the opportunity areas, and finally our recommendations. The New Jersey Audubon was founded in 1897 and is comprised of over 22,000 members. They introduced the SAVE brand in 2008, which stands for Support Agricultural Viability and the Environment. The goal of the project is to partner with local farmers and to ultimately rehabilitate grassland in this state of New Jersey. The New Jersey Audubon and their farmers have a common problem, and that's because New Jersey is the densest, has the densest population of any state in the U.S. New Jersey seeks to preserve and rehabilitate the grassland, and the farmers want to preserve their property as well as their livelihood. The SAVE brand seeks to align both parties and prevent further development within the state by preserving these land assets. We've termed the SAVE approach a hybrid solution. As many sustainable solutions require a collaborative approach, we feel that this hybrid nonprofit, for-profit model is an innovative and scalable solution that can be adopted by many NGOs. So how does this project actually work? Well, New Jersey Audubon actually pays the farmers, or commits to pay the farmers, a premium for any sunflower seeds that they can grow. The farmers, instead of planting then corn or soybeans, choose to plant sunflowers, knowing that they have a ready buyer. When the seeds are harvested, New Jersey Audubon sells these seeds to retailers or their own members, other customers. The birds obviously eat the seeds, and then the profits from selling this go towards rehabilitating the grasslands. Specifically, the sunflower type is black oil sunflower seeds, which are slightly different than the confection sunflower seeds that some of us eat at baseball games. And most of the time that this project is used to feed backyard birds. As far as the project overview, what we were tasked to do is to develop a business plan for the SAVE brand. And the challenge is that the program is not profitable after 5 years. The opportunity we see was to further develop this innovative approach to conservation and stewardship. In terms of the project outcomes, you have a chart up here of what exactly the client requested, which is a business plan for us to figure out how to scale the project and as well as develop a franchise model. What we delivered, we feel, satisfies all their requirements. It includes an analysis of their current practices, our recommendations, as well as implementation strategies. Below, what you see is exactly what the business program or business plan is comprised of. And the components include the marketing communication analysis, an operational analysis, financial modeling projections, as well as the sustainability innovation. The methodology for our research was broken into 3 categories: data collection, data analysis, and literature review. We conducted surveys and interviews of members, customers, their existing retailers, as well as New Jersey Audubon staff members. We also have provided the New Jersey Audubon with 2 specifically different financial models, including a current year model as well as a 10-year projection that incorporates a lot of their franchising requests. Finally, we also performed a sensitivity analysis, which the client can use for its operational strategy going forward. From our initial methodology and research, we had categorized the opportunity areas of marketing communications, operations, and financial. Many of these opportunities are cross-cutting and affect multiple areas of the business, primarily stakeholder engagement and the long-term strategy of the business and the long-term goals financially. Based on our research, our surveys, and our data analysis, we've concluded that 5 recommendations that you see in front are key to the success of the program. We're going to highlight 2 of them, which are number 2, improving marketing and communications, and number 5, which is addressing the environmental sustainability of the program long term. In our first recommendation to improve marketing and communications, the chart you see in front of you is part of our retailer survey. We want to highlight that almost 40% of their existing retailers stated that communication between them and the New Jersey Audubon could have been better. With that, we hope that the New Jersey Audubon would engage the retailers to increase the frequency and the nature of their communications, take a more proactive and consistent communication regarding the current availability of the product, whether the pricing's changed, and when the product is actually available. Supporting the product in this way will go a long way in terms of helping the retailers really bind with the product and actually be happy to sell it. Secondly, we want New Jersey Audubon to adopt best practices with regard to merchandising in the retail segment. What we envision here is educational materials for their clients at the point of sale, so that they can be educated as to where the profits are going, how the program is actually started, and so on. Really drive how the brand is different than your regular off-the-shelf birdseed. Really speak to the value of the product that they're actually purchasing. And finally, what we suggest in this recommendation is to prioritize the sales channel development. And what we mean here is that the New Jersey Audubon should establish an online presence to sell their seed, as well as expanding into areas such as local gardening stores or other retailers such as Whole Foods. In our second recommendation to address the long-term environmental sustainability of the program, we highlight here is part of the New Jersey Audubon member survey, in which over 90% of the customers correctly identified that the seed supports the New Jersey local farmers and that the profits are used to rehabilitate New Jersey grasslands. However, almost 61% incorrectly identified that the product is currently grown sustainably. In the long term, we recommend that the New Jersey Audubon transition to a sustainably grown seed through a few long-term sustainable initiatives. The first of these initiatives would be to conduct a life cycle analysis of the seed, to evaluate the ecological impact of a non-native seed being grown in New Jersey. Secondly, we'd ask that they pilot an organic farming technique, with the ultimate goal of having 100% of the sunflowers grown sustainably would go a long way towards meeting that goal of environmental sustainability for the program. And finally, applying a social enterprise framework. We feel that the inclusion of the partnerships with their stakeholders, their retailers, as well as the customers and the environment will ensure the long-term economic, environmental, and social sustainability of the program. In conclusion, we found that there's not a lot of historical context for this hybrid model or enterprise, but this new model of a nonprofit operating a for-profit business shows a lot of promise, and it's still evolving. It represents a novel and creative approach for environmental stewardship and conservation. And to fully realize the potential of the program, it demands an organization's full attention, 100% internal commitment to this project. All the internal departments must communicate and work together to leverage all of their possible assets in order to truly be successful. Thanks.
I was very interesting. You said at the beginning that was it who's purchasing the seeds at a premium, or how did that work?
So the New Jersey Audubon basically enters into a contract with these farmers, and they agree to pay an above market price for those sunflower seeds.
But back up on the first thing, there was a premium paid to the farmers or something, or on that chart?
Right. So instead of if the market price was $10 a pound, they're offering $12 a pound for any seeds that the farmers would sell to them.
And that's in order for them to not do other kinds of crops?
Right. It's an incentive for them to participate in the project.
And that's funded by the Audubon or the state? I thought there was a state premium in there.
No, this is all internal through the Audubon Society. So through the pricing later on down the line, they're able to
Okay.
absorb that and then.
Okay. I just
Continue
need a
to-
clarification. So it's sort of critical that they're paying that premium, otherwise the farmers won't plant it, right? I mean, that's
Sure.
sort of a critical part of that.
Yep. I mean, the other part of it is the corn pricing, the current soybean pricing. All of these impact kind of what a farmer may choose to grow in a given year. So this is that extra incentive to, help them and push the program to kind of work together.
Just out of curiosity, how big are their sales now, and with the recommendations you're making, what kind of 10-year projection will you be able to develop in terms of volume of sales?
So unfortunately, they had to sign an NDA, so I can't really disclose kind of where their profits are at. But the project is break even now, but it has a lot of room to grow if they kind of take on a lot of the recommendations that we've made. And the 10-year projections actually show pretty significant profit margins.
Time for one more question.
You mentioned your literature review included a CSA model. I was wondering if you could talk more about if the community-supported agriculture model influenced any of your work, or what you found from that.
So as far as the CSA model, what we kind of envisioned was as a way to sort of stabilize and figure out what their yearly sales would be, instead of having all of this product and then trying to go out and sell it. It would be a way to sort of pre-order it so that their members would be more engaged in the actual, in the product, and they would also see upfront capital that they could use to help them market the program or go out and seek other vendors. And in terms of the CSA model, it's more of a recommendation of these are a couple of different ways that CSAs run now. Take a look at it and see if that jives with what you actually want to, what the project should become, or if you don't want to kind of go towards that. So it wasn't a fully go for this type of CSA model and have this many shares at this price and so on.
Okay, get ready to do some clapping. Before I let you go, I'd like to recognize the faculty advisors who work so hard with these students. So Lynette Witter, Kizzy Charles Guzman, Susanne DesRoches, and Louise Rosen. Let's give them a round of applause. It's implied that you're also clapping for me. What you witnessed tonight was the work of about 60 very hardworking students working for a semester on issues that they really knew very little about back in late January. I think from the level of the work, the complexity in these projects, I think that they've done a remarkable job. I think you've done a remarkable job. And so I'd like you all to give a round of applause to yourselves. Once again, it's implicit that you're also clapping for me. Okay, enough joking. Time to celebrate. Please stick around and finish out our refreshments and congratulate one another. Talk about what you've done. Congratulations to all of you. Congratulations on graduating in a few days.